This happened to me and my family the other day. I'm 18 years old now, and this is by far the most horrifying encounter I've ever had. Just the other day, my sister and I were on the couch watching SpongeBob while eating lunch while our parents were asleep in their room. At one point during the episode, we both hear a heavy knock at our front door. The front door is made out of wood, so we couldn't see as to who it was. This was very strange, as our state was under lockdown, so I was confused as to who it could be knocking on our door, and for what reason. I told my sister to stay put, and I opened the door and was greeted to two men in yellow hazmat suits with masks on. They both introduced themselves to us, telling us that they were from the CDC and were offering us testing kits if we needed any. They even showed me paperwork claiming that they were professionals. Red flags immediately go off in my head when I realized that they had no vehicle anywhere in sight. In fact, it seemed as if they walked here just to talk to us. I told them that we were fine and proceeded to close the door, but one of the men put his foot in the door and insisted that we take them. After I told them no once again, they both looked at each other and began to tackle me onto the ground without hesitation, trying to put a face mask on me. At this point, my sister is screaming and I'm trying to resist while yelling for my dad, who then comes out with a metal bat and knocks one of them out cold. The other one then pulls a knife from his back pocket and begins to charge at my dad. With my dad being ex-military, he took the knife away from him pretty easily and called police. The two men were arrested, and the police had informed us that these men were attempting to rob us and cause harm. The masks they had offered us had apparently been sprayed with some toxic chemical to make you unconscious for hours, claimed the police. We are all thankfully safe now, but please use my story as a lesson and don't fall for tricks like this.
This happened to me about 2 weeks ago during the middle of a crisis currently going on now. For some context, I live with my dad in a rural area of Kentucky. The closest city is Lexington. I had moved in with my dad as I'm only 13 and my mom had unfortunately died due to cancer that happened to be the end stages. Needless to say, my dad and I both heard about the virus, and our state had issued a stay-at-home order and that non-essential businesses were required to stay closed. With my dad being the general manager at a grocery store, he had to go to work while I stayed at home for most of the day. Grocery stores were essential, so he'd be constantly going into work almost every day. One night, my dad had left for work. It wouldn't be home until around 12 as stores in the city were open much later than usual. It was a rainy night, and I was working on a few school assignments on my computer, as we had switched to the remote learning courses, which was annoying but calm in some ways. As I'm finishing up my math assignment, I got startled by the sound of something hitting my window. My curtains were shut, and I couldn't see what was out there, so I dismissed it as something hitting the glass from the wind outside. About 2 minutes later, I hear the same noise again, this time much more loud. Now, I was starting to get a bit freaked out, and I was debating whether or not to open my curtains. Not even 5 seconds later, the same thing happened again, and I realized that it couldn't be from the wind. I grabbed my flashlight and opened my curtains and window, and what I saw made my blood run cold. There was a very tall man dressed in all black standing on my grass, throwing medium-sized rocks at my window. I wasn't a paranoid person, so I firmly told him to get the hell off of there before I called the sheriff. However, he didn't seem to acknowledge or care about the fact that I said anything. He just kept looking up at me. With that, he simply turned around and walked away, disappearing into the night. At this point, I didn't feel threatened, but he definitely gave me the creeps. Fast forward about an hour later, I went downstairs to grab a snack, but was unexpectedly surprised to find our living room had been trashed. Boxes open, chairs fallen over, broken glass, torn curtains, and a Glock 44 on the counter that certainly wasn't mine or my dad's. That man had been in our damn house. He must have done this while I was up in my room. The reason I didn't hear all of this was because I had my headphones in and had my music blasting. I called my dad, who then told me to stay hidden and call the sheriff and that he was on his way. I called the sheriff, yet it took him a little bit longer to arrive due to the storm, but he confiscated the gun and inspected the house, and my dad wasn't far behind. Whoever that man was never found. He got away with it scot-free.
This happened just last week at our house, and it still frightens me as I write this. My 10-year-old brother Alex and his two friends Ryan and Chris were having a sleepover, as these past few weeks have been boring, having to constantly stay in your home and do nothing. I thought it was a stupid idea for my parents to allow a sleepover due to the possibility of them carrying the virus, but whatever. My mom had ordered my brother and his friends some pizza for dinner. With me being 16, my mom told me to look after them as the pizza place was quite far from where we lived, which was reasonable. Every 10 minutes, I'd go in and check up on them to make sure they were okay, and things went well for the most part. About 20 minutes go by, and I'm on the phone with my friend when I realized that the room the boys were in was now strangely quiet. Now I got suspicious, fearing that they might have broken something. I walked upstairs to the bedroom, but expectedly, everything seemed to be going fine as they were just playing some games. And that's when it hit me. I began to realize that there were only two boys in the room. Christopher was not. I began to ask Alex where the hell Chris went, and he told me something that sent a chill down my spine. Oh, he went with the man to go get candy. I could now see that the window was wide open. My heart sank into the pit of my stomach, and I began to frantically call my mom and tell her what had just happened. She began to lecture me about how I was careless and distracted, but told me to call the police and that she's on her way with the pizza. I call police while looking for Chris, and I finally see him coming, walking toward me with a filthy looking man who looked to be in his mid-60s holding hands with him. As soon as the man made eye contact with me, he bolted back down the road and drove off in an old Honda Civic. Alex and Ryan gave a description of the man they saw to us, and the police told us they would keep an eye out for him, but nothing ever became of it. Apparently, the three boys were playing a video game when a man they had never seen before came up to their window and told one of them to help him bring candy to us from his truck. Whatever his true intentions were, he definitely wasn't planning on giving them any sort of candy.
My name is Rachel, and this happened to me and my grandparents a few days ago. Last week, our state governor issued a stay-at-home order and not to go out for any reason due to the virus. I am 19 years old, and because my grandparents were both well over 60, I had to stay at home to take care of them as we didn't know how long we'd be in quarantine for. If we needed food or important essentials, I'd always go out to the supermarket by myself to get it while wearing a mask and keeping my distance. One night, I was up later than usual and my grandparents were asleep, so I decided to go to the kitchen to grab a midnight snack. When I walked into the kitchen, I noticed something right at the corner of my eye, and when I turned in that direction, I had the urge to scream. There was a man who I had never seen before crouched down by our pantry. He was holding one of our kitchen knives in his right hand. By some stupid luck, he didn't see me as he was facing in the opposite direction, so I slowly backed away and went back upstairs to tell my grandpa. My grandpa was a pretty tough guy and could put up a fight, so he got his hunting rifle and slowly crept down the stairs to where the man was and aimed his gun. With my grandpa's southern accent, he said in a very angry voice,
"Now you got about 10 seconds to leave our property, or I won't hesitate to shoot your brains out."
The man flinched towards us, and when he saw my grandpa's gun, he bolted out the door. That man hadn't been back, and I hope it stays that way. I'm pretty sure the man was either homeless or crazy, but either way, this story is downright terrifying.